Good morning, everybody. My name is Anthony Walker. I'm Deputy CEO of techUK, and very pleased to welcome you all today to this session, which is part of the techUK Talk series of events that we're holding through London Tech Week. And today, as you're aware, we're focusing in on the subject of jobs and skills and how we boost the UK's kind of skills and jobs potential for the future. And we've got a fantastic panel for you today of people who are deeply involved and have been deeply involved in a long time in thinking about how we drive the UK's digital skills base, how we bring more people into the tech sector and give more people the opportunity to benefit from the growth in really interesting jobs and opportunities that we have in the tech sector. And I think have a tremendous amount of kind of knowledge and experience to bring to the discussion today. So we're going to, the way it'll work is I'll invite some of the panel to give some brief introductions into them and what they do and their work. And then we will have about 30 minutes of kind of questions led by me. And then I'd like to kind of open it up to questions from the audience. And then we'll kind of wrap up. So we've got, and we'll wrap up by 12. Just before we do, just to say, you're all very well behaved on Zoom, I see, so everybody's muted themselves. So yeah, please do so, but then don't forget to come off mute if you want to talk. And if you've got any thoughts or questions you want to contribute through the chat function, please do that. I and colleagues will keep an eye on chat as well, and we'll try and draw in some of the thoughts or questions that we see there as well, and keep today as interactive as possible. But let me first of all introduce the panel. So we have Cheryl Allen, who is HR Director at Atos, who is responsible for culture and transformation. We've got Hannah Cornick, who is Head of Digital Impact and Sustainability at BT. We've got Rod Flavell, who's CEO and founder of FDM Group. And we've got Sarah Atkinson, who's Director of Corporate Social Responsibility at Micro Focus. And as I was saying, all people who've been deeply involved in the world of digital skills for some time. I'll ask them to introduce themselves in a moment, but I just wanted to, in terms of sort of, framing today from a techUK perspective, we just think there's never been a more important time to be talking about digital skills and how we retrain and reskill people for the future. As we've seen the global economy adapting to the shock and disruption of COVID, we've seen almost 10 million people were furloughed in the UK at the height of the lockdown. And while we hope that many of those jobs will recover, clearly many of them won't. And so we're seeing this sudden very transition and change in the labour market that is both a real challenge, but is also a real opportunity. Because at the same time, what we've seen, and techUK has done a bit of polling with Ipsos Mori and others, where we're seeing a really significant increase in awareness of the importance and relevance of digital skills. Well, a poll that we ran recently, more than 80% of people agreed that digital skills were likely to become more important in the next 12 months. And of the adults we surveyed, more than half said that they were interested in gaining more digital skills over the period ahead. And when you look particularly at younger people, that increased to almost 3/4 of those we surveyed were saying that they felt that it was really important for them to acquire more digital skills. So we have a really interesting moment, I think, of opportunity with the public kind of recognizing the importance of digital skills and what that means for the opportunities and the jobs in the future. And of course, right now we have a government that is very, very focused on the jobs challenge and the unemployment challenge to come. who recognises that digital and the digital economy is going to be vital to driving the recovery, and is really interested in how we take people from where they are, where they maybe don't have the skills base they need today, where they need to be able to contribute and be and gain from the opportunities that will come through digital and technology. So I think a really fascinating moment to be having this conversation and to really be thinking about what we can do at scale to really share the opportunities more widely that we know are going to come from digital. And so what I'd like to do is, first of all, just like to ask the panelists to do some short introductions, and then we'll get into a bit of a kind of Q&A with the panel. So Cheryl, can we start with you?
We can. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cheryl Allen. I'm HR Director of Culture and Transformation at Atos. For those that don't know, Atos is a global technology organisation. My interests and I guess expertise in this area, the past couple of years Atos has really invested, and I've led a significant reskilling programme called Future Fit. I also have a real interest and passion around all things future of work. And at the moment we're running a campaign called Digital Society, and I lead the skills stream in that space. So delighted to join you today.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Hannah, can we go to you, please?
Yep. Firstly, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of the panel. I head up digital impact and sustainability for BT's consumer business. So that includes not only the BT brand, but also EE and PlusNet. And my role is really around delivering BT's social purpose to connect for good. And one of our key priorities in that space is around how we ensure everyone has the digital skills they need to make the most of life in today's digital world. And that is both from a home life perspective and a work life perspective. And we launched a big ambition last year to equip 10 million people with skills by 2025. And obviously have been adapting that in response to COVID, and looking forward to sort of sharing some of our learnings and hearing from others as well.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Rod, may I ask you to introduce yourself?
Morning, Anthony. Morning, everybody, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to chat with you today. Rod Flavel, Chief Exec and founder of FDM Group, UK public company focused on IT and services, largely for major blue chip organisations around the world, 6,000 people. And I guess we're best known for FDM Academy, training, recruiting and developing skills. Most of the skills we develop are the ones under analysis today, so I guess we'll get into that later on. But 10% of our workforce are ex-military or folks who've taken a career break to look after family or raise a family. So quite an interesting perspective. Most of my time is spent on getting people into the workplace, but actually confronting the true cost and scale of this whole exercise. It's massive.
Thanks very much, Rod. Lots to get into there. Sarah.
Thanks, Anthony. So good morning. It's great to be here. Sarah Atkinson. I'm the Director of Social Responsibility at a company called Microfocus. If you don't know us, we're one of the largest FTSE listed technology firms in the UK. I'm also on the techUK Skills and Diversity Council and a member of the Thames Valley LEP Skills, Education and Employment Council. I'm really passionate about the skills agenda, but particularly around the importance of diversity and attracting a real diverse amount of people into the industry, whether it's sort of from the classroom to the boardroom. So looking forward to getting into the conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. So I'd like to kick off really to hone in on the kind of, I suppose the kind of core question that Rod kind of highlighted in his introduction, which is, first of all, trying to understand, when we're talking about the workplace and the future of work and the way in which work is changing across the economy. What are the skills and what is the skills gap that we're talking about here. And in terms of as employers, in terms of the skills that you're looking for directly as an organization, but also kind of your understanding, perception of what the wider demand is across the labour market, and how broad that demand is. Because from our perspective, digital skills isn't just about the digital economy; it's about the whole economy. It's about that need across the whole economy. But Rod, maybe I could start with you in terms of how you perceive the market demand for these skills. What are they, and where is this demand?
Yeah, I think if we look around the world, you've got to go to really the true driving forces. And it's my generation, I'm over 60, it's my generation who were the original COBOL programmers. We were the baby boomers. And if you look at any standard distribution curve, we are retiring at a rate of knots. So you've got two problems that need to be resolved in the marketplace. Management of legacy technology, and obviously we've got an expert here in Sarah at Micro Focus who specialise in that part of the world. And then you've got the other side of the engagement model, is how do you have a business now that operates in mobile? These two things don't actually connect together. This is the beginning of the gap. You have an age gap, you have a retiring population gap, and then you have at the other end of the market a complete lack of understanding of the true scale and scope and size of what we are trying to develop technology computing solutions to deal with. University, your one semester of Java programming doesn't really equip you to come into an environment where you've got to deal with complex applications with terabytes of data, and then the European Union fire GDPR rules at you and say, don't lose that data, otherwise the firm you work for, you're going to lose 4% of their turnover. I could go on that, but I think there are three themes just in that the rest of the panel could chew over for a while.
Good. Cheryl, can I come to you in terms of, as a technology-led organisation, I suppose the range of skills that you'll be looking for across your organisation?
Sure. So I think it's fair to say the rate of change in terms of technological skills and digital skills is incredible in terms of the pace of change. And I think what's clear for us a few years ago is that actually we could start to see almost a delta between some of our more traditional or heritage skills and actually the skills that we needed to serve our clients kind of today and tomorrow, so our more future hot skills. And there'll be no surprise if I say to you things like cyber skills, automation, big data, Internet of Things, all of those type of skills. But for us, we've kind of taken a different approach to it, and that has been actually looking, like lots of organisations, you could go and get those skills in the market, and actually then what do you do with the existing population that you've got of your workforce? We have taken a different approach, which is actually how do we invest in our people and bridge that gap from old to new. So our reskilling programme has really looked for people who may have transferable skills, and then to really invest in their learning to effectively give them some of those more specific platform tool technologies to make them kind of future fit. And our whole programme is based on that future fit mantra.
That's great. I'd like to come back to that and explore that in more detail in a moment. Sure. But Hannah, if I can come to you in terms of, again, you have this kind of very broad view of, a UK population kind of customer base, and you're ranging from, the kind of sort of everyday kind of skills to be able to participate in a digital economy, all the way through to the employment skills. To what extent do you see is that kind of a seamless thing in terms of people progressively building more and more skills, so do these things need to be looked at together, or actually are those two different conversations in terms of the kind of consumer skills and the employability skills, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question, actually, Anthony. And you highlighted at the beginning that actually here we're not just talking about digital skills for careers in tech specifically, but actually now 82% of job vacancies need digital skills of one sort or another. And I think there's been some really interesting findings that actually it doesn't necessarily follow that if you have the digital skills for home life, that you will have the digital skills that you need in the workplace. So I think the Lloyds Consumer Digital Index found that there were still 13.6 million people in the UK who had digital skills for sort of essential daily life tasks. You know, maybe they use social media in their personal life, but didn't have the skills they need for work. And that's, you know, why I think actually that holistic approach that looks to tackle developing digital skills and confidence, which is really key here, both through home life and work life, which is what we do through the Skills for Tomorrow programme that we run at BT, is really important. And I think, you know, what we see is that, yes, it's those technical skills that people need, but actually it's also about having the kind of curiosity and willingness to learn and continue to develop your skills, because actually, no matter where we are in our careers, given the pace of technological change, we all need to be constantly developing those skills. So actually, for us, when we talk about skills for the digital world, it's as much those softer skills, problem solving, motivation, collaboration, alongside technical skills, which are important in helping people unlock those employment opportunities.
So this is complicated, right? So on the one hand, you've got quite technical skills and very specific capabilities, but then we're also talking about a wider kind of mindset, and also you know, a much sort of different ways of working that isn't necessarily about the digital skills. It's about the different environment that people are working in, that involves far more kind of problem solving and so on. Sarah, if I can come to you, I mean, tell me more about the skills gap in terms of you know, the conversations that you have both within the company but also across with other employers, in terms of the struggle that they have to find the right people to fill the roles, and also I'm interested in your thoughts on, you know, what's the job creation potential of digital, of both the sector but also the digitization of the economy.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Anthony. And I think we touched a little bit on some of the skills earlier. I mean, I think definitely, you know, cyber continues and will only continue to grow to be absolutely critical for every business, not just a digital business. And I think that's something which we need to be thinking about, sort of seizing this opportunity, as you know, with the COVID-19 and everyone's been really forced to change the way that they work, and they've had to acquire these digital skills. Now is the moment to maybe try and engage and excite people that potentially weren't interested in a career in technology, to think, oh, hang on a minute, this is you know, potentially something I could retrain for. I could, you know, perhaps even parents being a bit more open to encouraging their children to think about careers in tech. You know, we know that often parents can be a barrier, candidly, to, you know, some of those important career choices. So I think we have to look at, you know, what's the future of work look like. We know that's going to continue to change dramatically. We know there will be core skill sets that will be required, whether it's in cyber or AI or machine learning or even DevOps. You know, all that stuff's critical, but every industry requires digital skills. So I think, again, you know, seizing on the narrative and being able to engage, and I'm thinking more kind of, you know, the work that we do, particularly through techUK and the Skills and Diversity Council, that kind of tapping into the classroom and inspiring young people, which has always been a challenge, particularly to think about engaging girls or kind of underrepresented groups who may not see themselves, you know, in a career. They couldn't imagine themselves. They don't have enough role models there. That actually now is really a great time to go back, and we've got the evidence there that this is the way the world is evolving, and there are all these exciting careers there for you. But just my final point here is it's not just the career purely in digital. Whatever you want to do, every industry is being digitally transformed. So, you know, if you want to be a lawyer, you know, you need to think about how that industry is being revolutionized by technology, and, you know, what skills you need to acquire if that is indeed the career path that you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. And my sense is that, you know, this combination of the disruption and challenge of COVID, but you know, and also this awareness of digital really is fundamentally changing the labour market, and you need a difference to the skill set, and digital skills should be a core part of anybody's skill set. You know, my sense is that is shifting, and this year, you know, we have seen a shift there. I'd like to come now to focus in a little bit on what all of you do in your day jobs, as it were, to in terms of kind of tackling this challenge, and how your organisation's really kind of focusing in a bit more detail. So if I start again with you, Rod, I mean, your whole business is kind of focused in on this challenge and has been for a long time. Interested in terms of your insights on what it takes to take people on that journey of taking them from not having necessarily the right skill set, but getting them into a place where they can come in and be very employable and productive within an organisation, and how, and also be interested in your, you know, whether as a business you've seen a shift in awareness and interest, you know, from young people or people wanting to retrain and enter into the sector.
Yeah, I think the drivers of demand are definitely there. I echo all the thoughts of my colleagues on the panel. So if we look at the practical stance of what we do, you think about bringing people into our organisation. We have a huge funnel and we've got to select the right people. But I'm very much in Sarah's camp here. You know, we want to make sure that we get people from the widest sections of society. We're very proud to have 53% of our company recognise themselves as BAMI, which is good. We've got ourselves up to about 33% of the workforce in technical subjects like programming who are female. So you've got to kind of get those big picture numbers right first. You need motivation, because to do between 400 and 500 hours of professional study to get up to a level where you can go and be a consultant and work on an application for a major blue chip requires, you know, a whole course curriculum that's designed to make sure that we give confidence at every step, but we've also got to assess. And the truth of it is, from week one, if somebody is falling shy, we know that they probably are going to have struggles in 13 weeks' time when they get out onto assignment. But we've got methodologies inside the business that can help people's confidence develop. We are dealing with the hard end of this debate here. So digital skills to me means programming, writing code, being involved in that huge labyrinthine pipe network between the legacy platform and the new front end. If you've got a banking app on your phone right now, and it's one of the British major banks that you've got that from, I can tell you now, that goes back to a lot of IBM mainframe technology somewhere around the world. And these things were not born to actually work together. And it needs people at different points in this cycle to do different tasks inside it. And Cheryl has touched on that with Atos, where they have those skills in their organization. And what they're trying to do is make sure they don't lose that knowledge, but bring on the new digital know-how so that they can be effective. And we see that in our client base, customers on that journey endlessly. They're recognizing that the modern audience wants to use mobile to access complexity. So we've got to have 400 to 500 hours of completely relevant knowledge transformation. And we've built that up over 30 years. And COVID, the last piece I'd like to say on this, created a completely new opportunity for us, where we had to bring these groups of trainees together as scrum pods using the agile Spotify methodology. And we tapped into our military project managers and created a whole scrum master philosophy. So now we run application training as well as individual coaching and training. So everybody, when they see the customer, is talking the customer's language. A lot to take in maybe 3 or 4 minutes, but that's the approach that we've adopted. Make it diverse, make it relevant to the widest possible audience, both in terms of age range, color, religion. We're agnostic to all of these things. So that's a kind of bit about what FDM's trying to do.
Yeah, and in terms of COVID, and in terms of the last 6 months, I mean, have you seen any sort of discernible difference in terms of either the volume or the nature of the applicants you're getting in terms of people who are now interested in taking these skills?
Yes, I mean, it is fair to say that industry around the world, and the UK is not immune to this, that our pipeline of people's actually increased. I wish I could say that wasn't the case, because that has consequences, but our pipeline of applicants has increased. We've got to try and be fair to everybody, so we are actively recruiting. Through COVID, the 3 key months of COVID, we brought another 400 people into the business worldwide, so that was important. But we equally had about 700 consultants, primarily in the UK, that were benched. So we had a massive exercise in managing all of those folks. We furloughed nobody through that piece, and we focused on making sure that the skills each of those folks had were relevant for the market that will emerge. And I'm sure later on in this discourse, we'll talk about the future. I'm very confident there will be a future, but we've got to get the niche training piece right for that future.
There's a bit of bridging to that future happening here. Cheryl, you talked about the whole approach that you're taking to reskilling your what must be a very kind of able workforce that you already have, but who maybe don't have the kind of digital backgrounds that are needed in the future. Tell us more about that journey in terms of how you go about that, and I suppose how those individuals take to the challenge of reskilling, because it's for any individual, it's a tough thing to do, isn't it? Particularly as you get older.
It is, yeah. So the programme was born around 3 years ago, and really recognised a number of those things that we've talked about on the call today. So, rate of change, changing market, changing technology, changing client demands. And all of that made us really reflect on the organisation we had and what were the skills and the profile that we really needed to meet those changes moving forward. And really that's where Future Fit was born, and it recognised there were a number of skills that would be declining, whereas there were also many skills that were in increased demand and more hot skills. So we launched the programme, and there's a number of different routes that people can take, but effectively we have set up what we call digital growth networks. They align to our hot skill areas, so things like DevOps, cyber, etc. Our employees can join those. They can understand the learning paths they would need to take to skill in those areas. They can meet the team. They can understand some of the work we do with clients, anything in the industry, any roles and opportunities that happen. So we drive people to those to really, I guess, assess their interest, and we work with them there. So if they have an interest in cyber, they will see what that plan would look like to get them to different levels of or roles within that kind of cyber family. We've had lots of really non-obvious moves. So we've had things such as PA move to be a cyber consultant, HR advisor move to be an SAP consultant, network engineers into kind of consulting roles. So some very non-obvious moves that we're very, very proud of as part of the programme. You're right, you touched a really good point, which is around sometimes there can be an inertia, but I think we have flipped that in terms of the positives and the real intent that we have, which is to do the right things by our people, to really drive a lifelong learning culture. I think gone are the days where you kind of did your education and came out and that was your learning done. I think now we all need to learn and relearn many times in our working lives, and really show that actually for our employees, we recognise their loyalty, we recognise that they have knowledge of our business, and we'd like to work with them so they can continue their careers and learn those new skills to enable them to have their careers longer and in future areas within the business.
And just on the, is your experience that anybody can make the change, or is the reality that this is going to be difficult for some people. I mean, you've got a very, as I was saying, a very able workforce. I mean, these are very capable people who are working for your organisation. But do you have a genuine sense that everybody can do this, or do we maybe have to take different approaches for different people, different ways of coming at it?
Yeah, so firstly, I think there's a piece around not everybody wants to reskill. So if we step aside the can they, not everybody does want to. We have tried to address that to an extent in terms of, and some of the power of colleagues has been really important. So particularly as the programme has developed and evolved, having and hearing from a colleague who perhaps you've sat next to for 5 or 10 years doing a very similar job, who suddenly has become a consultant or a cyber specialist, is a very, very powerful story and can encourage that can-do attitude. And we also have something which we call Find Your Fit, which is a bit of an assessment tool, and that helps map how close people are to being able to take on some of those roles. So what we do is we use that tool to show where people could best fit, and then we wrap that learning as to what the gaps are to do that. So we try and reduce any unsuccess, if you like, by matching well and putting that development around where they are versus where they need to be.
So I think that's a really interesting point, which is that the Find Your Fit bit, which is, for a lot of people, it's quite daunting, to think of, they may think, well, my role today doesn't have anything to do with technology, and then people are telling me that all these jobs are going to be technology, and they just don't know kind of how to bridge from where they are today to where they need to be. Either Hannah or Sarah, I'd be interested in your thoughts on what more organisations can do to help people see how there is an opportunity for them. Hannah, maybe in your work, you've got some perspectives on that.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps a kind of couple of thoughts. I mean, one, picking up actually on something that Sarah mentioned early on around starting at an early age. We do a lot of work with kids even at primary school level around introducing them to computational thinking concepts and different careers that use digital skills in one way or another. And I think, although obviously that's not going to address this sort of immediate economic and skills challenges we have, actually that's absolutely critical for the future in making sure that we have a kind of skilled workforce coming through who are curious and passionate about jobs using digital skills. I guess the sort of other angle on that really, I think, is about just having that kind of flexibility of learning options for people and allowing them to find the path that suits them. So, one of the things that we've done in response to COVID and as we develop our Skills for Tomorrow programme is to really broaden out the ways in which people can engage with learning. So, whereas traditionally we would have run sort of face-to-face training and work experience programs, for example, actually now we've moved a lot of our work through webinars or online video content, and actually we're finding that that's enabling us to tap into a much wider audience than we might have engaged previously. So, for example, whereas our programs previously had focused on younger people, we've seen that with our webinars over 40% of the participants are over 45. So I think it does show that there is that kind of appetite out there amongst a quite diverse range of groups to kind of build on their skills in the digital space.
I think that pathways point is really important. Sarah, go on.
Yeah, so I was just going to comment on that actually, because I think the whole concept of lifelong learning is something that we've been talking about for a while, but we've actually used COVID-19 as an opportunity to revisit that in a broader narrative around the overall concept of well-being. So obviously when everyone was, suddenly transitioned 100%, 99.9% into home office, that created, tension and people we're not all comfortable. Suddenly we're all, on Zoom calls every day and, really taking time to think about employee well-being was critical. So we kind of revisited the whole concept of well-being, and one of the pillars was actually lifelong learning, and actually getting people to think about their skill sets, where they wanted to evolve to. And obviously, a company like Microfocus, we have a very rich portfolio of ongoing training and education for all our employees, which was something we are able to sort of lean on very heavily. But the second point I wanted to make was around Microfocus Inspire, which is actually our social responsibility program, and its core focus is engaging our own employees to help the communities wherever they are in the world acquire the right skills to be successful in their digital future. And it's quite a deliberate phrase, because it's not just digital skills. It could be about sort of navigating just a different working environment. And so what we've done is, many of those programs were face-to-face mentoring, or getting into classrooms, getting into community groups. So we've had to flip a lot of that into virtual, actually very similar to what Hannah was saying. And we're actually just starting to run pilots now to get our employees kind of engaged and thinking about the difference that they can make even in a virtual world, which again is all a little bit new, certainly on the sort of volunteering side of things. And that's showing some sort of positive moves as people are sort of realizing and coming to terms with, this is the, I hate to say, new normal, but this potentially could be. We don't want to stop doing those things. We don't want to stop going out and engaging and inspiring young people. We just have to find different ways to do it, and there's a huge benefit back to our employee base in doing so.
So thank you. So I think my sense from what you've all been saying is that we know how to do this. We know whether it's in terms of Rod, in terms of the 400 to 500 hours of quite intensive training that it gets required to get somebody to the point where they're operational with those hard digital skills, or whether it is the nudging across in terms of capable people who need to update their skills or who could pivot into entirely new roles. We've got a sense of what it takes to pivot a workforce and to get people to the point where they've got the skills that are going to be relevant for a labour market for the years ahead. I guess my question to all of you is around your level of confidence that we can do this at the pace or scale that is required, and in particular, in the added complexity and context of COVID and what that's doing. Rod, you're smiling. I'll bring you in straight away on that. What's your thought? Can we crack this one? And then the obvious question is also, what's the wider role for government here, and how do we kind of coordinate better? But Rod.
In 1982, I sat in my first IT job at computing at VNU, and the header in the lead article that week was "Digital Skills Gap. We are 1 million jobs short." 1982. I don't know what's happened in the last 40 years, whether we've actually closed the 1 million jobs or created something else. I'm actually in the school of thought that says actually we've innovated and created something totally different to that skill shortage that existed all those years ago. And that's where the opportunity really lies, because the interesting thing about the panelists here, we all represent different facets of an industry that I've always likened to your grandmother's fabulous quilt, all those patches that are on it. Sometimes we never ever meet each other on this incredible journey that we're all on, because we get so fixated about the area that we actually are in. But that's the opportunity. I say to shareholders, when they're saying about the opportunity for FDM, I say, don't worry about FDM. We're a cork in the Pacific Ocean of opportunity. This is millions and millions and millions of people's opportunities here. But I like what Cheryl's really saying. I like what Sarah's saying about the need for people to commit. Nobody's going to give you this stuff. You've got to find it within yourself, to whether you're a 45-year-old mom wanting to get back into the workplace, You've just got to go out there, and if that's what you want, you've got to go and find the motivation, find the role models around you in your support groups. It's brilliant to hear what Micro Focus are doing there in building those pods and clusters of people to go out and inspire. In a way, we've all got to do that as leaders. We've all got to find the specific part of the niches that we operate in, and we've just got to sell well for UK PLC and capture those roles coming into this country, make sure we don't export too many of those jobs away. So there is a future for our next generation of graduates who are at the moment concerned, rightly so, because universities are not open presently. Didn't like what I read in the paper this morning about people signing up for accommodation and then they're going to get taught by correspondence. I don't think that's the university experience. Equally, we've got kids aged between 16 and 21 in technical colleges who want to get in to the tech workspace of tomorrow. And then folks leaving the military, the police, the fire brigade, the medical professions who want to get into technology. Everybody on the panel, everybody signing into this can create destinations for all of those folks. You know, that's kind of the mantra I have. So I think it's a brilliant industry, you know, but it is competitive. And as far as I'm concerned, if we can do it here in the UK with all the advantages that we have, with our open-mindedness, I think we're going to do well.
I mean, I think, I mean, you know, saying from a techUK perspective, it is absolutely a patchwork. And we see, you know, like all of you and across techUK membership, so many organizations and companies that do and offer, you know, great pathways in. But if you're on the outside of that, you know, if you're that 45-year-old mum, you know, you're making a huge investment. You're taking a huge bet on your future, but you may be less confident or sure or aware of the kind of job opportunities. Now, you know, if I do this, am I really going to get that job? Will that job really be open to me? Am I going to be good enough? All those kind of doubts. Are we doing? I mean, Hannah, are we doing enough to, collectively as a sector, to kind of sell the opportunity to people in terms of, you know, we all have this innate confidence about the ability of tech to drive jobs, but for a lot of people out there, you know, it's a big bet for them, isn't it? It's a big step to take.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, you know, we're increasingly seeing a recognition of people that this is the kind of growing sector of the economy or kind of growing skills area. I think, you know, a lot of people, though, just feel that it's not, you know, this idea of tech isn't for them. You know, it can be quite intimidating. And I think, you know, that's where we kind of try and take an approach. This is around skills for the digital world, of which, you know, we're all already part of in one way or another, and that you can build on that. And it's not, you know, necessarily about needing to become a coder. That's not the only way to be kind of part of the tech industry. And I think it's about kind of finding opportunities for people also to have an insight into the diversity of jobs within the tech sector. And, you know, that's where I think as employers we can work together and with government to facilitate that. So, for example, we have become founding members of an initiative called Fast Futures, which is starting later this month, where we've got a cohort of 1,000 young people taking a program over 12 weeks with ourselves and a number of other employers, which will not only equip them with these skills, but also give them insights into how they're used in a business context through case studies, virtual site visits, which I think is really important just for people to see actually how they can put those skills into practice.
Yeah, yeah. Cheryl, are we our employers, our wider employers, to kind of doing enough to be kind of open to the new and emerging talent that's coming in? I saw a question in the chat about sort of saying employers sometimes can be a bit, you know, maybe unrealistic about the level of experience that they're looking for. When by very nature, if we're growing this market, a lot of people are going to be coming in with maybe a less experience, but we need to get them going. Are employers sort of being open-minded enough about the talent, or do they fall back into the old bad habits of you know, just wanting everybody to be super overqualified?
So I think we have to think differently if we are to address the gaps. And that's in a whole host of ways. So in terms of internally, things like our reskill program, you know, you're not going to get 100% skill match. You're going to get somebody that's got some transferable skills, and we will put the rest around them. But it's not just about internal. So externally, we need to, if we're going to attract the best talent, and we're going to address the skill gaps, we have to think differently. And whether that's, you know, you cite the 45-year-old mum trying to return, you know, there are things like returnships, which many organisations, including ourselves, are doing to target some of those parts of the market. There are things where we can invest in, with lots of organisations out there, do things such as, you know, getting young females from education attracted and into tech, you know, Code First Girls, etc., etc. So I think organisations have a responsibility, and if they're serious about addressing that gap, really just need to think differently and take some different approaches, both internally and with external talent coming in too.
Sarah, I'm really struck that nobody's mentioned kind of government today. You know, this has all been about what the sector can do, all about what industry can do. I mean, have we kind of given up on kind of the full education structures? Have we, you know, has the industry just decided it just has to kind of fill this gap, or you know, given that there's government there that desperately needs a narrative about job creation and accessibility and leveling up and all of these things, you know, where does government come in to all this, and how do we as a sector work with government here?
It's a great point, actually, and I think, you know, what we're all kind of saying here is it has to be a multi-stakeholder approach. I think, you know, industry alone, you know, we're all doing some amazing initiatives. We've got great programs in place, but it has to be a bit sort of better connected. And I think, you know, we've seen some good moves, you know, obviously pre-COVID from government. The introduction of the new T levels in particular, I think, is a really good kind of bridge and opening up and attracting young people. But again, we need employer buy-in there to give the opportunity to do the placement work. We've definitely seen, you know, more commitment from government around the skills agenda. But as I said, you know, singularly, it's not going to work. It has to be a much more collaborative approach. And you know, I think we're all saying the same thing, really.
And what's the view around you know, the teaching of computer science in schools? I mean. It's something we've been talking about for a while. I mean, I still hear, you know, horror stories of kids being completely turned off by a subject that's taught, you know, in a way that they've just perceived as very, very dull, very, very non-creative. Is this, I mean, you know, are we getting to the bottom of that challenge?
I think, just a comment on me, I think I'm still horrified. I think the latest data was just over 50% of secondary schools even offer GCSE computer science. So, you know, that in itself is a challenge, even if you have the passion and the interest to actually get access to, you know, the right track of education is a challenge for young people. I agree. I think that we do need to see more digital skills integrated into mainstream teaching, and we need to see it, you know, it better connected to, as I mentioned at the very beginning, the different disciplines and the career choices. I think, again, there's a role for industry here, and I know Hannah mentioned things like work experience, and we all collectively need to do a better job of showing young people what exciting careers exist today, but also I think potential, because, you know, when you think about things like environmental issues, a lot of the solutions are going to be technology led, and for young people who are passionate about that subject, you know, that in itself could be enough to excite and engage them to even like start to consider learning a bit more about technology. If we can start to make those connections between science and the environment and technology, you know, that's just one example of how we can collectively do a bit of a better job.
Yeah, Rob, you were nodding there.
I was, but I was actually nodding at Greg, who put a question: is the apprentice levy a lost cause up there? And Greg, you know, I just scratch my head with that. I've written a few points down there. I echo all the thoughts of the panel, but I go back 10 years ago when I started to try and make a relationship with government. I realised I was knocking my head against a brick wall when the minister had changed 3 times in 1 calendar year relevant to our market. So, you know, I would say government, if it's serious about tech and tech's application, we need a consistent ministerial approach for the long term. The apprentice levy is a tax on business. It's not really focused. It certainly doesn't do a great deal of good for tech. So you find all our organisations are having to invest over and above that. Whether we actually get any relevance from it, I fundamentally question that. And to the point of computer science, I think the trouble with the kind of computer science concept is it's quite mathematical based, and the teachers in schools who get that subject probably teach it from a perspective that's dated. So I don't want to be negative about folks, because we need maths teachers of both sexes and of all denominations to be in our schools doing this, and they should be doing it with a perspective of computing involved in how you do it. But why can't it have a digital marketing slant? Why does it all have to be some kind of dull, drivelly numerical science? Why aren't we teaching gaming? Gaming's tech. You know, why isn't there all that stuff in schools? I bet you'd have so many folks signing up if, you know, sports hour was actually half an hour e-games, but then actually what goes on behind an e-game. It's a massive British industry. It's one of our great success stories. So I take a slightly more holistic view. My gut feel is, and I said this a few days ago on the pre-panel meeting, I'm a big fan of technical colleges. I really want to see us move back to 16 to 20-year-old tertiary education, the HND, OND style model, and get people into a vocational mindset that want to be vocationally minded early. And I think we will lose far fewer people that way and inspire more people to come in if we do it like that.
I think that's a really good point. I think, you know, I certainly see a lot of young people who do think very vocationally at a very early age, and who are looking for those kind of routes in. And I think, you know, there's again an unmet demand really that I think we could do a lot more to serve. And I see Lorna on the chat, kind of with another example of kind of computer science kind of turning young people off rather than really engaging them. We've got last 10 minutes or so. I'd love to bring in some more people in terms of raising questions, or so if anybody would like to chip in with a question, please do so. Just come off mute. We'll try and see if it works for people coming off mute and asking a question. If we get overwhelmed with questions all at the same time, I'll try and moderate it a little bit. But I want to just open the floor now to anybody who wanted to come in with a question. I'll just do a little pause just to let people do that. Nothing immediately. In which case, I want to then kind of just focus in for the last few minutes on, okay, what do we need to do next collectively? You know, if we're, if you know, and in a way, this is kind of input for me really, is, you know, in my role at techUK, you know, in terms of, you know, as we play a kind of facilitating role across our members, but also with, you know, engaging with government in terms of what are the key kind of things that what kind of calls you would make, you know, either to your peers across the industry, to people working on policy or government, or to others in terms of next steps, what you think we need to do to really deliver on the opportunity and meet the challenge that I think we all agree we face.
I guess, so one thought from me, Anthony, I think actually what we've seen from today is that there are a lot of fantastic programs and initiatives out there, whether that's kind of within individual organizations or kind of outreach programs supporting the wider community. And I think there's a real challenge around actually then helping people to find those opportunities, particularly the people who could most benefit from them, and finding the opportunity that's right for them. Because, you know, we've talked today about the fact that, you know, there are going to be much more specialist roles needed, you know, which require 400 to 500 hours of training, but equally there'll be other roles where perhaps it's a more generalist role and you can then learn on the job and specialise. And I think, you know, there's a real role that we could play as employers, working with government and the third sector as well, to actually make it easier for people to navigate that landscape and find the solutions that are right for them. And, you know, I think just sort of simple examples we've seen in our own experience, for example, by working with organisations like Job Centre Plus, who we work really closely with, actually is helping us to make sure that the people who really need our support are getting it.
I totally agree. I think that's an absolutely fundamental point. There's kind of this, you know, we talk about pathways. We need to help people navigate those pathways and signpost those pathways. And I do obviously agree that we need to do a lot more. Who else would like to come in?
Yeah, I think just to add on to what Hannah said there, which is very important, is the signposting and helping people. But I also think that the industry itself, we need to do a better job of kind of showcasing the diversity that we have to help attract sort of new candidates, or as I say, people wanting to retrain, or young people. Because if you can't see it, you can't be it, which I know we've heard that many times, but I think it's really important for people to learn about the careers from people actually working in it, of all, you know, backgrounds and experiences. And I think that helps and breaks the barriers, and people can imagine themselves a bit more. Oh, okay, well, I don't have to be a coder, I didn't have to go to university, you know. It's just showing that pathway and making it easier, and breaking down the sort of fear that perhaps, you know, does exist, or uncertainty. That, I think that's critical.
Thank you. Cheryl or Rod, do you like to come in on?
I don't want to echo what colleagues have said. I'm probably going to pick a couple of things here that do concern me, and I'd like to think that we're all trying to influence change for the better. But if I look around the world, nobody else has had an onboarding problem of getting new people into organisations like the UK has in COVID-19. US hasn't had that problem, Canada hasn't had that problem, not even in Asia. Because of remote working is culturally more acceptable, getting new people into organisations is straightforward. I can tell you, it is far from straightforward in the UK. We have an administrative blockage that needs amendment urgently. And I appeal to government to put pressure on administrations in organisations to actually realise, if we are going to have remote working, it's got to actually work far quicker than 8 weeks to get folks into an organisation at their starter pack job. I think the second issue that I have, and that is for all folks coming into the workplace for the first time remotely, how do they build their network? How do they do the on-the-job training that gets them those small nuances of difference that will help their careers escalate, speed and grow? Early days for everybody in this kind of Zoom, Teams, COVID universe, but it's the thing that I probably think about every day, at least once or twice a day. How can we make folks' experience better and give them the confidence by being part of groups? Because if you're somebody that got COVIDed and put out there, you've got your network. If you're coming in new, you haven't got your network. We've all got a responsibility to fix that one. And I think my third and last point is back to that thing about consistency from government. We all understand that government's directions will change dependent on their political aspirations for society and how they got elected. But they need to have some consistency of the interface between us in business and those folks in government. And boy, it changes too often. So if I could see those three things happen, I'd think that we could come out of COVID in decent shape.
Yeah, and very good. I think the that one of how do you onboard people, and particularly I think as if we're going into a longer term working environment where there is going to be more remote working, I think the challenge of how you make sure that still works for younger people or new people entering into organisations is a really important one. Certainly one that we're thinking about, as an employer ourselves as we continue to hire and bring people into organisations. Cheryl, can I come to you in terms of your kind of final thoughts around what you'd like to see happen?
So without repeating anything that any of my panel members have said, I think it's fair to say there isn't a silver bullet. And I think very much there is a joint effort needed by many. So for organisations, I think they have a responsibility to look at their own people and how they can continue to invest, support their own people, whilst also I think thinking differently about those they attract into their organisations. So that piece around how do they attract diversity, which in turn attracts good talent, which helps them fill some of those skill gaps. I think from an education perspective, I'd like to see more focus on how equipping students to learn rather than actually on a particular product, platform, etc. I think that lifelong learning is really important, that starts and continues from the education stream. And just on each and every one of us as people, as employees, I think we need to embrace that lifelong attitude towards learning, build those soft skills that you know we've all touched on. It's not just the hardcore technical skills, those soft skills are really important, and kind of give it a go, to be honest. And I think if we pull all of those together, we go a good way in terms of addressing some of the skill gaps that we have.
Thanks, Cheryl. I think you've done a really great job of kind of pulling all the threads together and really kind of summarizing, I think, you know, what a lot of the conversation has been about today. You know, we have kind of come to the end of our hour. It's been a fascinating conversation, and it, you know, as ever, it's gone very quickly. I think just my final thought would be that you know there are plenty of things to worry about the world today, but I actually think, you know, when we think about the retraining opportunity and challenge that we have in front of us, we kind of know what we need to do. We just need to do more of it. And I think, you know, as Rod says, you know, it very much is a patchwork approach. It's one that's going to require a lot of different people in different organizations that are quite different to kind of work together, be aware of each other, see how they can work together. You know, I think we need a lot of smart partnering with governments. I think we need to think about how we can help the education sector more, you know, and schools in particular, in terms of, you know, that some of the challenges that they have. But it does seem to me that we kind of know what we need to do. We've got a growing cohort in the population who I think are really interested in and excited about acquiring these skills because they can see the relevance and value that it's going to bring to them. And we know as technology businesses that the demand is going to be there in the economy, because we see, you know, the non-digital businesses that are trying to digitize, you know, all of those challenges, all of those kind of challenges that Rod highlighted around kind of, you know, bringing legacy systems up to the mobile era and so on. There's just a huge amount of work and a huge amount of opportunity there. And I think, you know, lots that we can do to address that challenge. I think we've got to wrap up there. Fascinating conversation. On behalf of everybody, I'd just like to thank Sarah, Cheryl, Hannah, and Rod. You've been a fantastic panel. I've really enjoyed talking to you all. I hope the audience have enjoyed it as well. And just say thank you very much, everybody, and wish you a very interesting and productive day ahead. Thank you very, very much.